Welcome to the podcast. It's Friday, talking some racing news. We'll get to NASCAR and IndyCar eventually here on the show with Rod Mullins, but we got to first talk with Rod because he's a celebrity drag racer now these days. Well, he has been in the last several years, but Rod, you had the chance down at Bristol Dragway this week to your foot to the floor and test your mettle against a group of TV anchors and NFL football players and actors, and you did as good. You got pretty far in this challenge. Man, tell us what was going on, and yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff here.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff about this. Every year prior to the Thunder Valley Nationals coming to Bristol Dragway, they like to get together and get the news media together, maybe some people out in the public, and some business owners and different people like that, and get us all together, put us there. They feed us, of course, and then they let us go out on the track. And this is the drag strip. This is Thunder Valley. And the first year that I got to do this, I was probably scared to death. I was intimidated because here you are, and you're almost expecting yourself to go out there and say, I've got to break 300 miles an hour. But you can't break 300 miles an hour, not in these little cars. But, the first year that I did it, I think we were racing some Camaros then. I think it was Camaros. I had a lot of fun with it, enjoyed it a tremendous a lot. And then, I guess I was just kind of trying to fit in with the whole thing. And this year, it just happened to fall. Of all things, this fell on the same day that my granddaughter was graduating from pre-K. And I did a bad poppy thing. I went ahead and bypassed the kindergarten or pre-kindergarten graduation and went on to Bristol. And to say that it wasn't worth it, it's an understatement. It was worth it. It was well worth it going this time around.
So yeah, Afton will have to forgive you. You have the kindergarten graduation next year. Maybe it won't fall on the same day because if it does,
Right.
I'm guessing you're going to be back in Bristol anyway. But
Probably again, you're right.
so you've raced in Camaros. One year it seems like you were racing in the same cars like the state troopers. Uh,
Hmm.
this year it was Volkswagens and Nissans. How did those compare?
And some Hyundais.
Oh,
And the
Hyundai too.
Hyundais,
Okay,
I don't
okay.
think the Hyundais, the first round with the Hyundais, I don't think did as well. I don't know if they just didn't do as well. But when I got started in my first round of racing, I started in the Nissans, and I was impressed. It had some go from the green light. It had some go on it, and I was hoping more than anything else to kind of stay with the Nissans through the entire competition because I felt like I've got a chance at this. But in that semifinal round, I ended up driving a Volkswagen Jetta, and I own a Volkswagen, I own a Beetle, but I'm not too thrilled with this Jetta because this Jetta just did not jump off at the point where I needed it to, and I ended up losing to one of the top people with Super Grip, which is one of the sponsors, the main sponsor of the Thunder Valley Nationals coming up in the first part of June. And it was a fair race. It wasn't that, he did anything that was off key or anything like that or jumped the start or anything. It just did not accelerate. And, I could have sounded like Joey Logano and been real whiny after the whole thing and just came right out and just said, it wasn't fair. It wasn't a fair race or anything like that. And then found myself backtracking a little bit later on, like Joey Logano did this past week or something after the All Star race. So, yeah, other than that, I had a blast. I enjoyed myself tremendously. Got a chance to talk to several people there. Got to talk. We talked a little bit of shop and talked about the racing thing. Talked about that. Talked about high school sports. Talked about a lot of things going on in the high school sports realm right now. Here especially in our area, as we're getting into tournaments right now and so forth. So it was a chance to kind of, rub elbows, so to speak. Even had a chance to rub elbows with a former state senator from the state of Tennessee who just got defeated back in November last year, and he was there representing his company, who he does public relations for a number of people in the Tri Cities, and we just had a blast. It was just a great time.
NFL guy, former Tennessee Volunteer. The name's escaping me, but I remember reading the article. Who was the NFL guy that was there?
AJ Johnson, Alexander Johnson, or AJ? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, a former All SEC linebacker, I think you said
Yep.
in the article. And so you didn't pull the Joey Logano. You didn't have to backtrack on anything. You didn't do a Ricky Stenhouse either and get out and start fighting anybody.
No, I didn't
No?
want
Okay.
to. I mean, this is one of those sports of where unless somebody crossed over the line on me going down the stretch, I don't know if you remember that big exchange here years ago, seeing the video of it of John Force and somebody getting into it because of crossed the line and made them go off into the wall or something like that. Nothing like that. This was just pure fun. This was just the whole experience was just fun. I was even hoping maybe before it was over with, I'd get the slowest speed plaque, but I didn't even get anything out of it this past week. But overall, Anthony Vessel told me as I was leaving, he said, "Hey, you did pretty good this year. That's something to be proud of." And I was like, "Yeah." And I'm not a big avid, like, if I did, I'd probably be a whole lot better. I'm not a big avid fast driving car driver and things like that. So yeah, it made a difference. I took some things to heart from Matt Hagan, who was there. Matt Hagan's from Christiansburg, Virginia. He's a four-time world champion in NHRA. He gave us some pointers there at the beginning, and one of the things that I had previously learned, and then I learned it again, I had to learn it for old time's sake, was putting my left foot on the brake and having my right foot on the gas, keeping that gas kind of, just going ever so much, just to keep the RPMs up a little bit, but holding that brake. But immediately, by the time it turns yellow, you need to hit. And that's not exactly like the first yellow. That's by the time it rolls down to the second set of yellows on the Christmas tree. You need to be in motion at that point, ready to pull out. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting there is what you're going to be doing. And I learned a lot this time around too. This was just a really, really fun experience.
And the this NHRA weekend coming up is June 6th to 8th, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we'll be looking forward to that coming up at Thunder Valley. And so, good excuse from Bristol Dragway standpoint to get the media folks down there and others down there to get attention to that weekend coming up here in a couple weeks. So we'll be looking forward to that, of course, as well. All right, let's switch over now to the other kinds of fast cars that go around. Actually, there's two kinds, I guess. Well, because we don't normally talk IndyCar, but because uh, we've got another attempt at the double coming up this weekend.
Mm.
The Indy 500 Coca-Cola 600 double with Kyle Larson. We will talk some Indy just because of that. So, what's the latest? How did he do qualifying for Indy? And then what's the latest just in terms? I haven't looked at the weather to know. I mean, are we look? Is it looking like he'll actually maybe be able to do it this year?
I don't know. That's one thing that we need to check and find out here real
I'll
quick.
be looking
I
at it right
haven't
now.
found
Yeah.
out myself. Okay.
Okay.
But as for the IndyCar thing, he qualified decent, but had to change out. He's going to have to go from the back. So, in one way, that's kind of a good thing that he might be going from the back of the pack because he'll at least find out how these other people are going to be on the track, and he might be able to come from behind and go through the pack and so forth, and maybe outlast everybody toward the end of the race. But things also happen in the back of the pack. But I think he's ready for it. He's that's on his mind predominantly right now is this double double as we call it, trying to be able to pull this off at Indy and then get on the plane, get to Charlotte in time, be able to run the 600, and not be left in the lurch like he was last year. And I mean, I can go back and I can remember watching the 600 rain delayed and then getting up to the point of where he had just arrived. The Indy 500 had gone over a little bit more than what it should have. And then, fortunately for him, they had the rain delay. But by the time that he got to Charlotte, they had already ran a little bit, and then he was all getting ready for this, big event to get in the car and climb in, and they call the race. And so that hurt him. I think it hurt his morale about everything. For some people, that would be one of those times of where you just say, "I don't know if I want to do this again." But Kyle Larson is one of these people that enjoys the challenge, so that's the reason why he's doing this again. So, we'll have to wait and see. Well, have you found out what the weather is for
I do
Sunday?
have the weather looks good in one respect. Indianapolis, 1% chance of rain on Sunday. So Indianapolis is going to go off on schedule, which is great because last year a big part of the issue was, I mean, it rained in both places, and
Right,
Indy started late, and then that threw off the whole schedule for the day. So Indy,
right.
1% chance of rain will not be an issue. Charlotte has a 40% chance of rain, but it looks like just a spotty shower
Hmm.
um, in the afternoon, and then again spotty, a chance of a spot thunderstorm in the evening. So if anything, there would be a possibility of a rain delay that would just make it even easier for him to get from one place to the other because the first place. No rain in the forecast. Second place, maybe a chance of rain, but if it does, it'll just give him a better chance to get there. It looks like to me, weather-wise, he shouldn't have any problems.
We won't see probably in all likelihood, we won't see Tony Kanaan sub for him at Indy and stuff in order for him to be able to make the race at Charlotte, because that was the worry about this year. They were afraid that here he would race and then miss out on the opportunity to get to the 600. So Tony Kanaan was going to be kind of sitting there ready to go and jump in the car when they were, ready for him to get on the helicopter and get on the jet and fly to Charlotte. So that looks good. Now the Charlotte thing, another little question mark there. If it, I broke this down. I was looking at it here before we went on the air, and I've got the exact number here. And let me look at that. I got to tell you this: the number of miles. And I was a little bit surprised with this. I thought it was a little bit longer, but it's not. It's 579 miles from Indianapolis to Charlotte Motor Speedway. Now, that's not too bad of a difference. That's 579 miles. That's equivalent to what he's going to be racing on Sunday night at the 600 in Charlotte. But if you go by car, 9 hours. That's what freaked me out about it. 9 hours. That for me is like from leaving where I'm at now and driving to Myrtle Beach. So
Mhm.
we're somewhere in the neighborhood 8 to 9 hours. So it's going to be a challenge. Of course, they'll open it up on the jet, get him down there and everything. But I think the big thing that's going on this weekend, I don't think people have been talking as much about the Kyle Larson deal as much as what happened this past week with Roger Penske essentially dismissing those three people in his program in Team Penske, one of them being Tim Cindric, who is the father to Austin Cindric, who is a driver for Penske Motorsports. Um, it just shocked me. I was just, it suggests now maybe that Joseph Newgarden's race that he won last year at Indy was tainted to a certain degree. And, he was trying to fight this image last year of supposedly cheating and all this other stuff that had been going on, something an issue or something that they had last year, and it came right back around, and here we go again, and we get to Indy this time around, and Penske dismisses three of them, and I understand that when Roger Penske dismisses you, it's not exactly a personal issue, but it's pretty damning, is what it is when that happens to you, because it's almost like if you can't get along with the captain, then there's something wrong here, is what really goes with the whole territory. So now we're open and we're left open. What's going to happen to Austin Cindric? You know,
Yeah.
Dad's not going to be there. He has helped and kind of mold a little bit in the racing, a little bit of the racing community, some things for Austin and being able to race. Um, is he going to be allowed to be around him in the pits? Is he going to, be a part of the Penske from that, from what they said on this first part of this week? He's out of Penske completely. So, it's going to leave some options open where Austin Cindric may even show up next year. He may show up in another team if things happen that way. I don't know. He may be one of these drivers that's sort of left in limbo. He's had a good year so far, off and on. He's had a good year so far, but um, I wonder where he's going to show up. I mean, he may be one of these drivers that just ends up sort of like a lame duck president. It's sort of that way. You'd have to describe it in that kind of sense that you just wonder he's got the ability, but is there going to be somebody that's going to have enough talent, in the garage and behind the scenes that's going to be able to put him back to the front where he needs to be at? And I don't know if there is anybody right now, and I don't know if there's going to be that many open seats now, considering that William Byron this morning signed a 4-year extension through 2029 with Hendrick Motorsports. So you can forget about that opening. That's not going to be happening anytime soon. So there's going to be a lot of question marks coming up here by the time we get through the to the end of the NASCAR season.
Glad you made that connection. I had read this. I read stories about this, and Tim Cindric. The last name Cindric is not a common name. I did not know the connection between Tim and Austin. I assumed there probably was a connection. And yeah, I mean this scandal. You mentioned what I'd read about this was it was a modification to something on the back of the vehicle.
Yep.
There
What
are
was?
there are quite a few people doubting that it would maybe have any kind of impact on the speed of a car. But that
Right.
said, there's a rule in place for a reason. Um,
Yep.
and you mentioned that it throws into question last year's Indy 500. I mean, they put the winning cars on display there at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. From what I read, one story I read about this, the winning car from last year on display had the same modification that was ruled to be illegal in
Right.
this year's inspection. So, I mean, it's not this. This is a huge. I mean, Roger Penske, Team Penske. This is a huge deal in NASCAR. This is akin. I'm starting to think about other equivalents in sports. I'm thinking Spygate with the New England Patriots at the Super Bowl, 20 years ago. I mean, to me, it
Yep.
could be on that level of, oh my God, you got this great successful team that wins, what is it, 20 Indy 500s,
Hmm.
and they're caught cheating. This is
Yep.
huge. You're right.
Well, and this kind of goes. There's people that have been, uh, for years been trying to point the same finger at Rick Hendrick over things in Hendrick Motorsports because, how many races has Hendrick Motorsports won? It's in the hundreds, and they have, there's people. Denny Hamlin, even to this day, Denny Hamlin has pointed the finger at, Rick Hendrick and said, there's something not right here. There's something that just doesn't work out. And then he questions why NASCAR is even affiliated with this car that they brought to Le Mans last year, why Hendrick had this connection and how he was able to pull the strings to get this. It just goes to show you that, yeah, there are some of the bigger powers in the motorsports industry, and some of them are able to wheel, deal, be able to get what they want. But, when Roger Penske, I mean, seriously, when he has established himself, I think, more than anything as an honest man. That's the way I've understood him. Just the way he comes across. He's not flamboyant. He's not like a Felix Sabates was when Felix Sabates was in the sport, NASCAR here several years ago, with the flamboyant kind of look, the smoking of the Cuban cigars or anything like that. Roger Penske is just Roger Penske. He expects you to get the job done, and he expects you to go out there and do it. This is the same man that had GM on the ropes, and he just about came away with Saturn, and that was the car maker, the auto body or the auto car company, and he almost got that out of General Motors, and General Motors all of a sudden just said nope, because I think they were almost in a way afraid of what Penske would do with it, and that was he would make it better than what it already was. And so they backed out of the deal, and we didn't have a chance to see Roger Penske produce cars like a lot of people were hoping that he would do.
So we don't normally cover Indy. Our interest in Indy is because of Kyle Larson.
Hmm.
We got a good weather report, so there will be plenty of. I mean, because Kyle Larson is attempting the double, there'll be plenty of NASCAR fans watching Indy 500. Just
Hmm.
for that part, and then the time in between where he'll be in the air, and we're getting ready for the Coca-Cola 600. What do you think we can expect this weekend? It's going to be obviously. with Kyle Larson specifically, it looks like he'll be able to do as much of the double as he can do. Avoiding if he can avoid crashes and that kind of thing, he'll be able to run. It looks like he'll be able to run 1,100 miles on the track. It is hard, we know. There have been a few people who've attempted this. Um, I'm not, I don't have it in my mind right now, but I know I've read that there have been, was Tony Stewart maybe the most successful at this?
Tony Stewart's probably the most successful out of it right there. He was able to do both of them.
Hmm.
And so he, it didn't, the outcome didn't work out that he won both of them on the same day, but for what he had done, it was in and of itself, it was a great accomplishment for him out of this.
I'm trying to look because he finished he finished all 1,100 miles. Let's see the crossover
I
history. I
think
got
he
it up here.
finished like top 20. I want to say 13th, maybe in a race or something like that.
I
And I'm
thought,
trying to think it was Coke 600. He may have finished 13th or something.
yeah, I'm trying
So,
to pull that up. As fucking, I got Wikipedia up here. I wish it would be
okay.
easier to. Okay, here we go. Let's see. So John Andretti was 10th and 36th. Let me go
Right.
real quick. Looks like Tony Stewart was actually ninth in 1999, ninth at Indy and fourth at the 600.
Fourth. Okay.
And then in 2001, he was sixth at Indy and third in the 600.
Okay.
So two top tens in that period. Robbie Gordon, the year in between, was sixth at Indy, but then 35th at the 600. So and the last guy to do both and finish both was Kurt Busch in 2014, sixth at Indy and 40th in the 600. So
Yep.
well, I didn't even remember that Kurt Busch did it. So
Yep.
that's the yeah. There's some guys who've done. I mean, so that's interesting. Tony Stewart had two pretty good runs. 2 different years. That's setting the bar right there. That's the bar for Kyle Larson this weekend. Obviously, is to try to get two top tens. What do you think? What are the chances he can at least because we know what he can do on the track in NASCAR. He's obviously one of the top NASCAR drivers. What's the realistic expectation for him at Indy, do you think?
I think he's got his work cut out for him at Indy. I think being in the back of the pack and having to start in the back of the pack this weekend is going to really determine what kind of driver he is and how well he can use this car to his advantage to be able to get to the front and how he gets to the front because we will see some people this weekend. I think they're going to be gung ho. They're going to be gung ho for wanting to win out of this. And I think of Pato. That's one of the drivers out of this. He's so hungry for an Indy 500. It just, I think he's got a chance at it. I really don't know if Joseph Newgarden and all this stuff that's happened at Penske will either unite them or it will pull them apart that much more to where Newgarden will not run as well. It'll just remain to be seen. I don't think he will win the 500 by any chance. I think it's going to be, if he does, he may have a top 10, maybe a top 20 if he's lucky. Now he may just go and just buffalo us all before it's over with and win at Indy, which would be not saying a whole lot. He could do it, but everything's going to have to fall in place the right way for him to be able to get to that point. They're going to have to get some breaks. They're going to have to get some very lucky breaks. And the same thing goes for him at the 600. You're kind of at a disadvantage if you start late in the race. You've got to hope that you're in a caution. You're at a stage point of where you can make this change and so forth if you have to. If you're doing it while green flag racing's going on, it's very tough to get caught back up to the rest of the field. You'll usually maybe even go a lap or two down, and then that's barring anything else that may possibly go wrong with the car while you're driving it. Whoever the driver is going to be on Sunday, that's going to be the challenge right there for him to be able to pull something off and be able to win this race or at least finish top 10 at Charlotte.
I'm trying to do something here real quick. I should have looked this up before we got on. Flight time Indianapolis to Charlotte. I'm seeing that about an hour and 40 minutes is a
Yeah.
typical time. Let's see. And of course, that's actually more commercial flight. A nonstop flight would be about an hour and 10 minutes. Of course, you got to fly your helicopter to from Indy from the Indy Speedway to the airport, and then from the airport to the Charlotte Speedway. So there's some extra time there. Yeah, and then I mean we talked about this last week too, Rod. It's not like he's just riding around in a car for a little bit. The 600 is an endurance race if you haven't raced at all that day. The 600 is a tough race if you're just waking up and getting in the car and doing the 600. He's already going
Yeah.
driven 500 miles, flown 600 miles. I mean, this is the 600 itself is an endurance test. So this whole day is an incredible test of your mental stamina, your physical stamina, everything else.
1960 was when the first 600 or the World 600 was run at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And Bruton Smith, when they did it, they wanted it to be different than the Indianapolis 500. To them, the 500 was, "Ah, that's nothing. Let's take it one step further." And Bruton Smith, in his marketing and PR ability of what he did, he extended it by 100 miles. And when you do that, this isn't not only a test of endurance on the driver, but it's a test of endurance on the car too, because most of these cars maybe are set up for 400, 500 laps, and that's what they usually can make it if the driver drives well. They don't run into any kind of wrecks or anything. The Indy cars, they're similar, but I mean they're geared for 500 miles is what they're geared for. Um, for Kyle Larson, it's going to be immediately upon getting out of that car and going to the airport. They're going to get him on board the plane, and they're probably going to shoot him up with some IVs. And they're going to have to, because he will have already, you know, got rid of so much fluid and things out of his body and so forth, that he'll have to have some nutrients or something to get him going again by the time, and probably have to give. I've heard of drivers even having sort of like these oxygen shots or something like that, of where they go and you breathe, and it's almost like going in a chamber to where it gives you an added bit of energy out of this whole thing. So they may use a combination of things on him in order for him to be ready, because I mean, you don't think of it that much, but an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 20 minutes from Indianapolis to Charlotte, you're sitting on a plane. That's all you're going to be doing. You're sitting on a plane. For me, I think I'd be moving. I'd be wanting to constantly move and keep myself going, but you can't do that and take fluids in at the same time to help get you through to the 600. So I don't know. It's going to be a busy day for that young man, no doubt about it.
I had something in my mind that I was going to compare to it, but it turns out it wasn't exactly right. Jimmy Johnson ran a marathon, but
Hmm.
it wasn't the same day as a NASCAR race. He actually ran the Boston Marathon 2 days after racing in Richmond. I have
Hmm.
run marathons, and I was thinking to myself, how did he possibly run a marathon and then get in a car and drive for even a mile to the grocery store, much less
Yeah.
another race? But um, no, it's and not to mention that in the case of Kyle Larson again, it's not like he's racing the same kind of car in both
Right.
races. I mean, it's almost like you're playing a different sport. I mean, it's yes, you're in a car and you're driving around a track, but Indy racing and NASCAR racing are two very different disciplines.
Yeah, you've got more room in a NASCAR in a stock car than what you do in an Indy car. Matt Hagan brought this up at the Celebrity Drag Race Challenge on Wednesday. They were talking about Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart, at one point, Tony was a very skinny person. Then Tony, just like all of us when we get older and stuff, we start packing on the pounds and everything. And then, Tony was a little bit stocky when he was driving for NASCAR. But Tony Stewart had to lose a little bit of weight in order for him to get in a top fuel dragster that was previously driven by his wife, Leah Pruitt. So, it takes some energy and some stamina to be able to pull something like this off. And you're getting into such a crammed car. You're getting into an Indy car like this, and then your hands are up like this almost. You're driving this way, and if you hit the wall, this is like the old Danica Patrick thing that she was talking about. You cross your arms up. You just let go of the wheel as quick as you can. But what can you do at 200 some miles an hour if you're trying to hold this up to keep from your wrists, holding on to the steering wheel and breaking your wrists out of it, because if you hold it steady, that's what's going to end up happening. The sharp jolt could break your wrist. So yeah, it's a completely different thing getting in that stock car and as opposed to an IndyCar racer out there on the track.
Should be a fun day for race fans.
Yeah.
A long day, but lots going on, and they're both races that on their own are iconic races. You mentioned starting the 600 back in the 60s. I mean, it was a great marketing effort there, and then of course the Indy 500's always had the lure. Memorial Day weekend. I remember as a kid growing up, they wouldn't even broadcast it live. They would wait to run it on, what was it, Monday? They would show it on the TV.
Yep.
Because they wanted to preserve the experience for race day fans who got there. And there's lots of people obviously there at the track. So, now of course, all these for these many years we've been able to watch both races on the day. Should be a lot of fun.
Well, it's going to be a sellout at Indy. I know that. I know they said that they were expecting probably in the neighborhood of about 350,000,
Oh God.
probably what they're expecting and stuff. And that's going to be people inside the track, outside, and everything. And I've been to Indy once, and I went to the first Brickyard race, and it's huge. I mean, it's just a huge track. And Talladega, I've heard people say that Talladega rivals that, Daytona rivals that, but there's just something about Indy, and it's just to see the stands full at Indy this coming year, that's going to be a side in and of itself, because I'm kind of looking forward to that. I've, too many times I've seen the Brickyard race here over the last few years that has just been dwindling off and on, and participants, people coming out and going to see the race, and it's almost as though Roger Penske has come in to try to see what he can do to save the day. Well, he may have done it this time around with the Indy 500 selling out this time around. Let's see what he can do with the Brickyard race that'll be coming up probably end of July, first part of August for NASCAR. Let's see what he can do with that. So, yeah, there's a lot on the line with this, even with the crowds that are expected. I think Charlotte probably, in all likelihood, will be sold out. If you've never gone to a 600 before, I'm sure that there's probably some people out there that have seen a 600, watched it on television and stuff, but there is nothing quite like a Charlotte Motor Speedway Coca-Cola 600, because they go all out on military. I mean, they go and they just bring the military in. They salute them for what they do, the sacrifice, even of the ones that have been killed in action and so forth. They salute these guys. My only problem this coming weekend is who they're going to have as the Grand Marshal. I think that's just to myself personally. I just don't think it was a place for him to be there. I think they should have probably put somebody else in that position. But hey, they're trying to appeal to an audience, and that's what they're trying to do.
Well, on that note, we will of course be looking for Rod's reports coming up after the race day on Sunday, Memorial Day weekend. I can't believe it's already
Yep.
where is this year gone? It's already Memorial Day weekend coming up. I don't know.
I know.
Seemed like I blinked, and it was like we just started doing Daytona like it's a couple days
Yep.
ago, and here we are. It's already 600 weekends. So anyway, well, Rod, as always, thanks for your time, your insight, and congrats on the run to the semifinals this week in the drag race.
Appreciate it, Chris. And let's remind everybody too, it won't be on Fox. The 600 won't be on Fox this time around. It's going to be on Amazon. So if you're an Amazon Prime member and you've got that, or you've even wanting to just try out Prime, not doing a pitch for them here, but still, the race will be on Amazon this time around. So for people that's expecting to see it maybe on Fox, too bad. They've switched it over to Amazon this year.
I'm glad you were. I would be on the TV pushing the little buttons like, where is it? Where it's 600 times. So thank you for that reminder, Rod. Doing your service here as always. Well, thanks again, and we look forward to talking to you again next week.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks.